la 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 bum 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 digga-da-dum.
Hello and welcome to Andre Sue Knits. I'm Andy and I'm here today to talk to you about my latest obsession, which is rug making, also known as rug hooking, rug punching. I don't know if you follow along with me on Instagram, but even though I haven't been uploading videos here on YouTube, I have been posting frequently to Instagram, and I've been posting my rugs, and I've gotten a lot of questions about tools on making rugs, materials, techniques, so I thought I'd put together an informational video, like a rug making 101 type video for you to answer some of those questions. To get started, it's probably a good idea to show you what I'm talking about. This is the first rug that I've made, and it is made from worsted weight wool, all hand dyed by me, and half hooked, half punched onto a linen backing. And I'll explain what the difference is here in a minute. The other rug I've made is this ram's head. This one was completely 100% punched or tufted using a punch tool or a tufting tool, and I punched it onto a rug warp backing, which is 100% cotton backing. And right now I'm in the middle of working on the third rug that I'm using linen, much preferred linen. And again, I'm using worsted weight wool, all of my own hand dyed, and 100% wool. I became aware that you could make your own rugs by hand through my friend Sue, who you might know as Knit24 or Legacy Fiber Arts. She has some handmade rugs that were made using a hook and cut strips of wool fabric. And to me, I was really intrigued by the idea of making rugs, but I didn't have those materials. And the more I looked into hooking rugs using wool fabric, the more cost prohibitive it seemed to be. You need a cutter, those are several $100s. The wool fabrics are pretty expensive. And the frames required to hold the material into place are also quite expensive. So it made me think, like, why couldn't I use yarn? And the more I looked into it, it seemed to me that there was a tradition going way back of using yarn and using wool strips. But many of today's rug makers use the wool strips. There's a whole subculture in the craft world of rug making, and that's called rug hooking. That is using primarily wool fabric strips and hooks. And so I started hooking rugs that way, but using yarn, because as a knitter and a yarn dyer, I had access to worsted weight wools, whereas I didn't have access to the fabric strips and whatnot. So I ordered myself some linen. The idea is you take a piece of fabric and a tool. You could use a crochet hook, but they do sell hooks that are specifically designed to be comfortable in the hand for rug hooking. And basically, you draw a design on your backing fabric. In this case, it's linen. And you take your tool, you push it through the fabric, grab your wool, in my case I used yarn, and pull it through up into loops. And that is the foundation of your rug. Well, it's a really slow and tedious process to hook a rug, especially with worsted weight wool. I understand why people like the fabric strips. They're wider, which means they take up more square inches per loop versus worsted weight fabric, so they move a little quicker. Hooking a rug by hand with a hook with worsted weight yarn, it's really a slow moving process. And so I was on Instagram following the rug hooking hashtags, and I stumbled across a tool called a punch needle. And it looks a little bit like this. So the idea with a punch needle is, instead of using a hook to pull your yarn up or your fabric up and create a loop for your rug, you thread this like a needle and you punch it through, and it creates loops on the underside of your fabric. And it is a much faster motion, and it makes creating a rug by hand with a worsted weight yarn go much more quickly than hand hooking. The only challenge with trying to make a rug with worsted weight wool is that there's only one tool commercially available that allows you to do it with a worsted weight yarn, and that is the Oxford punch needle. It seems to me that today rug makers fall into two categories. You have the rug hookers that hook with a hook and wool strips, and then those that punch or tuft rugs with a needle use rug yarn, which is basically a bulky weight yarn. So both of those approaches are a little bit, would require me to purchase new materials. So I'm really interested in making rugs with worsted weight yarns because that's the materials I have on hand. And that category of rug making is a little overlooked. There's a lot of rug yarn tools with a bulky yarn, and there are a lot of tools for rug hooking, but for a worsted weight yarn, there's only one company producing these needles at this moment. I hope that's going to change in the future, and I think it will. But it's the Oxford Needle Punch. If you're interested in purchasing this tool, a couple of things you need to know. The labeling system on her needles is a little confusing. There's mini, there's fine, and there's regular. And at first glance, I thought the regular made the most sense. Worsted weight to me is a regular yarn weight, so I ordered the regular, but it's intended for rug yarn, bulky yarn. You're gonna need the fine needle, which is intended for worsted weight. The mini is for like fingering weight yarns. So you're gonna want a fine needle in any length. They come in, I think, like number 8, number 9, and number 10. And what those numbers denote is the length of this needle, which dictates how high the loops are. And really any loop height is fine. The bigger your loops, the more materials you're going to use, because more materials are going to be consumed in each loop. That's one thing to think about. And the reason you might want to differ the heights of the loop are for different effects. So say in my sheep rug that I showed earlier, if I wanted the sheep to pop off the rug, maybe I would use a longer needle to create the sheep and a shorter needle for the background, just for those kind of effects. And I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but I want to be clear that what the information I'm giving you now is my opinion. It's what works for me. There are different schools of thought on the approach to rug making. For me, I view rules as guidelines. I feel like rules or guidelines are there to try to set you up for the best chance of success, but it's not the only way to do something. And I think a lot of the rules or guidelines that are out there in the cybersphere are really intended for durability. So if you're approaching your rug and you're like, how many loops should be in each square inch? How long should the loop length be? What should my rug backing be? How do I finish it? You're gonna get a bunch of different answers from a bunch of different people, and I don't think any of the answers are wrong. I think each different approach is gonna give you different durability, if that makes any sense. So when you have your rug punch and you're looking at finishing the edge, some finishing techniques are gonna be a little longer wearing than others. Foundation materials, I've been asked a few times, like, can I punch a rug or make a rug out of a coffee sack? The answer to that is yes, with a caveat, right? Like, if you make it out of that, it may not last as long as a rug made out of linen. Linen is more durable than coffee sack burlap. However, if that burlap rug is just hung on the wall for its entire life and the linen rug is put by the front door and gets walked and worn, gets a lot of wear, maybe the burlap rug may outlast the linen rug. So rules are made to be broken. They're just there to provide some guidance. But you could rug hook or rug punch on any material, finish it any way you want, have it as densely packed as you want or as loose. I tend right now to like my loops a little further apart. If you pack them too densely, the rug curls, and you have to steam block it to get to lie flat, and it can be a challenge to do so. And some people out there might say that my rugs are too loosely packed. I disagree. So anyway, just things to keep in mind if you're out there in the cybersphere getting all of these different opinions or points of view on rug making. It's just like knitting. You are the boss of your knitting, and you are the boss of your rug making. So let me show you how to get started with your own design if you like. So to get started in rug making, the way I do my rugs is you just need a foundation fabric, a tool like a needle punch, yarn, and then something to hold it in place. When I first got started, I bought this frame, and it's got what are called gripper strips on it, and the idea is you stretch your backer over it, it holds it taut, and then you can either hook or punch with it. And it works really well holding the piece in place, except I'm making rugs that are larger, and so as I work a section and then move it over, when I then pull it up to move it over again, it's snagging my yarn, and I don't really like the way that looks with like little plies being pulled. It just wasn't working for me. I know a lot of people love the gripper frame. This would be perfect if you were doing a small piece on the inside and you didn't have to move your piece around, so your yarn loops weren't ever in contact with these gripper bars. They do sell these giant frames that will hold an entire rug, but they're pretty cost prohibitive. So I tried this, wasn't really a fan of it. What I am using that I really like are these heavy duty lap hoops. They are 2 individual hoops separated with some bars. And the beautiful thing about this is you put your piece on, the hoop is heavy duty enough and expands enough that as you work your piece, you can move it around and the already worked rug will fit under the hoop. And because it's like on a little lap stand, you can get underneath there if you need to, and there's room for your punch or your hook to go through to the top. So I highly recommend these. I'm carrying them in my shop currently, so if you're looking for one, you can find them on andresueknits.com. And I have 2 sizes. I started out with the 10 7-inch combo, and it works fine, even for a larger rug. I just move it all around. But I've recently brought in to the shop these 14-inch and 10-inch hoops. And the reason I like the bigger hoops is because I don't have to undo the top piece and move the rug around. You can work more area with one setup. The hoops do get the fabric really taut. However, if you are, say like this piece here, I need to put it in a hoop and work the top edge here. So part of this rug is going to be caught under the top hoop. You can't get it tight as a drum when you are hooping already worked sections of the rug. So I will tell you that. You can't get it tight as a drum. You can get it pretty tight. That may annoy some people. I prefer that to using the gripper bar frames and having my yarn getting snagged. So I'm willing to live with it not being tight as a drum. I have no trouble working the punch needle under these conditions, and I like how portable this is. So I drag it around the house from room to room as I'm working on my rugs. Several people have seen my rugs on Instagram and they've asked me if I'm going to offer kits, and the answer is yes. So if you like one of the rugs you've seen today, I am working right now in putting together kits where you will receive a piece of linen with the design drawn on it, a color card to go with it, as well as all the yarn, and you can add on a hoop if you like. I wish I could sell you the needles, but they are currently sold out. So again, the Oxford company sells these, amyoxford.com. She's sold out, her distributor sold out, but you can get your hands on these through independent resellers on Etsy that haven't sold out yet, and a few sites here or there aren't sold out of these needles, but she's supposed to restock soon. If you're not going to work from a kit, it's really easy to work from your own artwork. If you have a piece of foundation fabric like linen, which is what I use, which is also available in my shop, andresueknits.com. I'm going to sell it by the yard. You can use a Sharpie to draw any design you want, and then use your punch needle to go through the design and just punch it in. It's almost like a paint by numbers type deal. You could use your own children's drawings if you want, trace those onto your backing, and then recreate those into really special keepsake rugs. You could take a picture of a beloved pet, blow it up, trace it out, and needle punch that. Really, your imagination is the limit. You can create any type of rug with any type of art that you like. To use the punch, it's a simple matter of threading the needle and then pulling the yarn taut to get it into the slit. I mean, it's that simple, and then it's ready to go. To get started, I like to push the needle into the linen. I will reach underneath and pull the yarn through, that yarn tail through, and then just keep stabbing the fabric. I do not punch every single hole on my backing fabric. I find that if I get it too tightly packed, as I'm punching through, I'm hitting other loops, I'm creating yarn snags. So I know some people say cover the back completely. I think that's more appropriate when you're using a bulky yarn with a bulky punch. To me, I found that that doesn't work really well with worsted weight yarn. So you don't need to entirely cover the back. The most important part, in my opinion, about working rugs is to make sure that on the right side, where all the loops are, that it's packed enough that you cannot see the backing fabric. You know, you don't want that. But you also don't want it so packed that when you're done, it curls and it's difficult to block it out and steam it straight. So if you've decided you're interested in punching a rug instead of hooking a rug, which I would recommend because hooking a rug by hand takes a lot longer than using a punch needle, also known as a tufting needle. There are times when you would want to use a hook, and that is for repairing the rug. When a loop gets snagged or pulled and pulls out, it's really useful to have a hook to go through each hole, grab the loose yarn and pull it up, and then just reform those loops in your rug. It's as simple as that, which is why when you're finished with a rug, I've been asked a few times, do you glue the back? Do you secure the back somehow? And the answer is no, because if you put like a rubber cement backing or a glue or something on the back and you get a pull, it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to fix the rug. So with handmade rugs, the general advice is to not glue the back. Now, as you know, if you're a knitter, what blocking does for knitting, right? Blocking, if you have a lace piece and you block it, you get it wet, you stretch it out, it holds that design in place. The same is true for rugs. You were still working with wool. And so when you're done with your piece, you're gonna flip it over and you're gonna take a wet, damp towel, put it over the piece, and then iron it section by section, allowing the iron to force that moisture into the rug. And that moisture will steam the piece, and it helps cement the yarn into place. So it holds that shape, so there's not a lot of threat of it snagging or pulling out. There are a bunch of finishing techniques you can use with rugs. Well, I've really only used one so far, and that is a whip stitch binding. And basically when your piece is done, you measure 1 1/4 inches out around the edge of your tufting or your hooking. You're going to serge the edge of that material. Oh, I didn't mention that. Linen and monk's cloth or rugwarp or whatever you choose for a backing, they're a very loose open weave which gives you the ability to push your tools in and get yarn in the middle of the fabric. But what that also means is it's so loosely woven that it will unravel. So when you're getting your rug backing ready for working, you need to zigzag stitch the edge, sew the edge, do something to the edge to keep it from unraveling. I've seen some people even run a bead of Elmer's glue along the edge, far away from where they're going to actually be working the rug, but just anything to keep this from unraveling, because you don't want it to unravel up to your work and then you have nothing to work with to finish your rug. So anyway, one method of finishing the edges is to cut it within an 1.25 inches of the edge, turn it over again, and then take a yarn and whip stitch it down. This is probably the most durable finish from everything I've read. Another technique would be to serge the edge, fold it up to the edge, and then cover the cut edge with a piece of durable fabric. And then covering the whole back with another piece of fabric. There's a bunch of different finishing techniques. I don't think any finishing technique is better than the other. Again, advice is based on durability, essentially. The whip stitch edge is probably the most durable finish, because when you fold a fabric down and you've got this knife's edge, it is very vulnerable for breaking at that knife's edge. If it breaks at that knife's edge, which is right up against your loops, it's going to be impossible to repair. And so that's why some people might advise against it. However, if this is a decorative throw rug, it's going to be a wall hanging, you know, it's your call. There's no right or wrong answer, I don't think. So that you can do a search on finishing techniques for rugs and you'll find a bunch. When I actually get to the finishing of this rug, I'm going to do the knife's edge fold under, and I may video that and upload it for you for your, just for FYI informational purposes. So if you have a kit or you've drawn your your picture on your fabric and you're like, where do I start? You can start anywhere you want with a rug. You can start in the middle, you can start in a corner and work your way across. You can actually punch it or hook it in any direction. Things to keep in mind: sometimes the direction you're working in can show. You know, if your loops are, if you're moving in a straight line, your loops tend to all line up and look like a little row. So if you have, like, in your design just a big open background of, say, blue, it might be wise to do an irregular shape and fill in, and then do another irregular shape and fill in. That kind of mixes up with the background, the direction of the loops, and gives it a little motion. With this piece here, all of the blue background was done in that manner. I could have like punched it all going the same direction, and it would have felt a little bit more static from the front view. But again, there's no right or wrong. If you want a more static feel to your piece, or you can even experiment between do a background just in rows and do a background with like some crazy shapes and see what you like. So some other questions I've gotten are, can you use any yarn in your rug? And the answer to that question is yes, you can. I'm punching my rugs with merino yarn because that's what I have on hand. And again, it comes down to durability. Like if you hook a rug with some hardy, scratchy Icelandic wool and you put it on the floor, it is going to withstand a lot more foot traffic than if you use, say, a cashmere yarn on the floor. You know, so if the intent is a wall hanging, use whatever you want. If the intent is for it to be a high traffic, durable rug, well, then you probably want to use a very hardy wool. I am using my rugs like people are like, please tell me you're not putting these on the floor. And I understand why they say that. But I do keep one in my studio. I think this is part of my studio, by my desk, under my desk. So I actually put my feet on it when I'm working at my computer. And it brings me a lot of joy and happiness to see it there, to get to put my feet on it. And I love that it's made out of merino. I would never put that by a front door or a back door where there's lots of traffic because it would deteriorate. So it's all about where you're going to put the rug and the durability. Some art rug hookers, like the ones that use hooks and fabric wool strips, will work in roving, or like locks of fur for different effects without a second thought. They've even said you can vacuum them. I don't know if I would do that necessarily, but again, like my whole motto is rules are made to be broken. They're guidelines. They're not like laws. So yes, you can make rugs with merino yarn. If you're interested, I do have a couple of worsted weight yarns in the shop. So if you're interested in getting materials from me or kits from me, I have what I'm calling a Woolsome yarn. It is 100% merino, but it is a heavier, thicker micron merino, so it is a little bit more durable. And then I have a Cuddlesome worsted weight merino that is a little finer micron, so it's a little less hard wearing, but it's got a softer feel. And right now I've got I think 22 colors in there. I'm working on expanding that palette so you can you know, create any art you want. How much yarn does it take to create a rug? And my flower sheep rug, that it's about 3 feet by 2 feet, and that one took approximately 9 and a bit skeins of yarn. It's got, I think, 11 colors in it, so it took portions of different hanks of yarns, but it takes quite a bit of yarn to do one. And again, it comes back to how densely do you pack it, how long are those loops. So keep that in mind when you're making your rug. I've also gotten questions on how long does it take to make a rug. So far I've only got 2 completed rugs. The first one was half hooked and then half punched or tufted with a punch/tufting tool. That one I think took probably 40 man hours because of the rug hooking part was really slow. Once I discovered the tufting tool or the punching tool, it sped things up dramatically. I would say the ram's head, which is a little bit bigger than the flower sheep rug, I don't know, 25, 30 hours maybe total invested in that piece. Not a ton more than knitting an adult sweater, I wouldn't say, but it does take a bit more yarn. Another question I've gotten is, do you just throw the rugs on the floor? Do you put backings under them? And I am just throwing them on the floor. Some people say you need a backing. You can use a non-slip mat. You can use like a cut piece of carpet padding. The thought behind that is if dust, debris, sand, whatever gets on your rug, it filters through your rug. And if you got like tile or hardwood floors and you don't have something to protect your rug from the grit, it can abrade and wear out your yarn or your backing. So having a padding or something there gives a buffer. It can all filter through and give you a buffer between the grit and your rug. And again, it comes back to durability. You know, you can do anything you want. It just, certain things you can do or choose make your rug more durable. So I think I've yammered on enough about rug hooking. I hope that answered your questions. If you have more questions, leave a comment below. I am planning on hopefully putting up another video with maybe some more demonstrations on how to finish the rug. If you have questions, maybe I can answer those in a video visually. I think videos like showing how it's done is always so much more easy to understand than trying to type a text into Instagram. So for those of you who've been curious what I've been up to, I did used to have a knitting podcast on this channel, and several people have noticed that my videos disappeared. And I figured I'd just explain why. I got busy with other things. Many of you probably know that I co-host an event called Needles Up. Needles Up is an event that is it's like a pre-event for the 2 big yarn festivals or fiber festivals that happen on the East Coast. I live in Virginia, so I attend Rhinebeck Sheep and Wool Festival, or the New York Sheep and Wool Festival, every year, as well as the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival every year. And it's darn near impossible to get a booth at either one of those. And there's a lot of, you know, indie business that wants to participate, myself included. So I got together with Sue of Legacy Fiber Arts, and we are we had our first event, a Needles Up event at Rhinebeck into October of 2017, and we're getting ready to do a Needles Up on the eve of Maryland Sheep and Wool this year as well in Columbia, Maryland. If you want the details, needlesup.com will have the details of the time, the place. We're going to put VIP tickets up for pre-sale Wednesday of this week, if I can get this video up in time. So that's been going on. And the business part of Andre Sue Knits just got big. And then I don't know, I just felt like the videos existing out there were just kind of weird. So I privated them all, and then I got messages about that. So I don't know. This video will not get privated. I will leave it out there. I think I will let Andre Sue Knits be more of a collection of informational videos instead of a podcast. So anyway, thank you everybody for joining me. If you're interested in keeping up with my knitting, my shop, my rug making, and all of that, find me on Instagram, Andre Sue Knits on Instagram. I'm very active there, not so much Ravelry. And again, leave me a comment if you have any questions down below, and I'll try to answer it in the next video. And as always, thank you so much for joining me, and until next time, bye.